What if the most powerful Jedi Master in galactic history got a do-over? What if Yoda, all 900 years of him, opened his eyes as a youngling again, with every mistake, every lesson, every haunting failure burned into his memory? Would he prevent Order 66? Could he stop Anakin's fall? Or would his knowledge become his greatest curse? Yoda died on Dagobah, with centuries of regret weighing on his spirit. He watched the Jedi Order collapse, failed to stop Palpatine, and spent 20 years in exile knowing he'd lost everything. But imagine if the Force gave him another shot, reborn as an infant, with complete memory of his previous life intact. This isn't just about fixing mistakes. This is about whether the Jedi Order's greatest champion could actually change fate, or if some destinies are unavoidable. First, we need to understand what Yoda would be carrying. This isn't a child with vague impressions. This is 900 years of lived experience, trapped in a youngling's body. And here's the thing, according to established canon, Yoda's species ages incredibly slowly. It takes them decades just to learn to walk and talk properly. Imagine being an infant, unable to speak, unable to move, but remembering everything. The Clone Wars, watching Mace Windu die, feeling the disturbance as thousands of Jedi were murdered simultaneously across the galaxy, fighting Palpatine in the Senate chamber, and losing. Decades of isolation on Dagobah, talking to swamp creatures and wrestling with failure. Now here's where it gets psychologically complex. In his previous life, Yoda admitted his failures to Luke. Stopped they must be, he said of the Sith, but he couldn't do it. He told Ezra Bridger through the world between worlds that he'd been too rigid, too attached to the old ways. Yoda died knowing the Jedi Order's dogmatism contributed to its downfall, but would remembering that actually help him change, or would he be doomed to repeat the same patterns? There's a discussion thread from the Star Wars canon community that raises a compelling point. Yoda's greatest weakness wasn't lack of knowledge, it was his inability to adapt. He knew Dooku had turned to the dark side, but never understood why. He sensed the dark side clouding everything, but kept making the same political alliances. Memory alone doesn't guarantee wisdom. Let's say young Yoda somehow communicates his knowledge to the Jedi Council, maybe through the Force, maybe by demonstrating abilities no child should have. What does he actually tell them? In 800 years, a Sith Lord will infiltrate the Republic as Chancellor and destroy us all. That's not actionable intelligence. Palpatine wouldn't even be born for centuries. Does Yoda try to reform the entire Jedi philosophy from childhood? Does he argue against the rule forbidding attachment, knowing it will drive Anakin to darkness? Here's the paradox. If Yoda changes too much too early, he might prevent the specific circumstances that he remembers. It's not exactly the grandfather paradox, but it's close. If he stops the Jedi from becoming Republic peacekeepers, maybe Palpatine never rises to power the same way. But then, different threats emerge, ones Yoda has no memory of. According to Legends material, particularly the Darth Plagueis novel, the Sith Grand Plan took over 1,000 years. It was intricate, multi-generational, adaptive. One Jedi, even one with foreknowledge, trying to dismantle that. The Sith would notice. They'd adapt. Yoda's memories might become obsolete the moment he acts on them. And there's another angle here. Multiple fan discussions point out that Yoda's knowledge of the future would make him incredibly dangerous to the Jedi Order itself. The Council might view a youngling claiming to have lived before as delusional, or worse, possessed by something dark. They might expel him, or ironically, put him in exactly the kind of rigid structure he'd be trying to reform. This is where it gets really interesting. Could Yoda save Anakin Skywalker? With his memories, Yoda would know the exact moment Anakin is discovered on Tatooine. He'd know Qui-Gon's prophecy about the Chosen One. He'd remember standing in the council chamber, telling a 9-year-old boy fear is the path to the dark side, and watching that fear eventually consume him. But here's what fans often overlook. Yoda's approach to Anakin was part of the problem. When Anakin came to him, terrified of losing Padme, Yoda told him to train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Technically wise? Sure. Emotionally useful? To a traumatized young man? Absolutely not. Even with all his memories, would Yoda actually understand how to mentor Anakin differently? There's a fascinating parallel here with The Last Jedi. Luke Skywalker, Yoda's final student failed Ben Solo by acting on fear. When Yoda appeared as a Force ghost, he told Luke, "The greatest teacher failure is." But that wisdom came after death, after letting go of his own ego. Would a reborn Yoda actually possess that humility as a young Jedi? Or would he be the same arrogant master he was before, just with more data? Some Reddit discussions suggest Yoda might actually make things worse with Anakin. If he's too protective, too controlling. Anakin might rebel harder. If he reveals he knows the future, Anakin, already struggling with nightmares and visions, might spiral faster. The prophecy of the Chosen One was always a double-edged sword, and knowledge might sharpen both edges. Let's tackle the big one. Could Yoda stop Darth Sidious? With his memories, Yoda knows exactly who Palpatine is from the moment he enters politics. But proving it? That's the impossible part. Palpatine's greatest weapon wasn't his Force lightning, it was his patience and his political genius. He left no evidence, no witnesses. Every move was insulated by layers of contingency. Even if Yoda convinced the Council that Senator Palpatine was a Sith Lord, what's their move? Assassinating a Republic senator based on accusations from a Jedi child with impossible knowledge? That would trigger the exact crisis Palpatine wanted. Public perception that the Jedi were a dangerous cult trying to control the government. And here's the brutal truth from their final duel. Yoda lost. He admitted it. Into exile I must go. Failed, I have. That wasn't just a tactical retreat. Palpatine had become too powerful, and more importantly, he'd already won politically. Order 66 wasn't just a military strike, it was a cultural victory. The galaxy cheered when the Jedi fell, because Palpatine had spent years making them look like elitist warmongers. Could Yoda prevent the Jedi from becoming generals in the Clone Wars? Maybe. But fan analysis suggests that refusing to fight would have been seen as cowardice, or worse, proof they were separatist sympathizers. Palpatine's trap was already sprung the moment the clone army existed. Yoda's memories don't include a way out that doesn't involve the Jedi losing public trust. So here's where we land. Yoda being reborn with his memories would be a tragedy, not a triumph. The Jedi Order's fall wasn't about lacking information. It was about spiritual bankruptcy. They'd become so rigid, so dogmatic, so intertwined with political power that they couldn't see the dark side growing in their own temple. Yoda himself embodied this. He sat on the council for centuries, teaching younglings the same lessons, following the same code. And when the crisis came, he had no answers. There's a reason Yoda's Force ghost in the sequels is playful, irreverent, and willing to destroy the sacred texts. Death freed him. He let go of his attachment to the Jedi Order as an institution and reconnected with the Force as something wild and living. A reborn Yoda would lose that liberation. He'd be trapped between what he knows will happen and his inability to change it. Some fans argue he could go rogue, leave the Order, work from the shadows, build something new. But that's not Yoda. For 800 years, he was the Jedi Order. Asking him to abandon it would be like asking him to stop breathing. His identity and the Council were inseparable. The most likely scenario? Yoda tries to change things, makes different choices, and watches in horror as events spiral towards similar darkness through different paths. Maybe Anakin doesn't fall, but another powerful Jedi does. Maybe Palpatine is exposed, but another Sith takes his place. The Force seeks balance, and the Jedi's time was ending. One reborn master, no matter how wise, couldn't hold back that tide. The real question isn't whether Yoda could save the galaxy, it's whether he could save himself from his own legacy. In death, Yoda finally learned what he'd been teaching wrong his entire life. Attachment isn't the problem, toxic attachment is. Fear isn't evil, unexamined fear is. The Jedi didn't need more knowledge or better strategy, they needed humility, compassion, and the courage to evolve. A reborn Yoda would have 900 years of memories, but the same fundamental nature. And that's the tragedy of the Jedi Order. They had all the wisdom they needed and couldn't use it because they were too busy protecting their own authority. What do you think? Could Yoda actually change fate, or are some failures unavoidable? Drop your theories in the comments. And if you enjoyed this exploration, subscribe for more Star Wars deep analysis. May the Force be with you.